if somebody, I've told this to some of you before, but I think it's so funny. If someone had told you 20 years ago that you would be coming in voluntarily and asking someone to stick needles in your face, would you have believed them? No, I wouldn't have.
If it were you, yes.
Thank you. But BOTOX is the most popular cosmetic treatment in the world. It was approved in 2002 for medical use because people used to have eyelid spasms where they couldn't open their eyes, and it helped them. They found wrinkles were going away, coincidentally, around the eyes, and that's how it was discovered. I'm sorry, it was 2002 was when it was approved for cosmetic use. 20 years ago, it was approved for medical use. So it's been around a long time, very large safety profile. I'm sure nobody here is nervous about BOTOX because most of you have had it, but there have been over 2,000 research articles written about BOTOX. 55 countries use it, and over 11 million treatments of BOTOX have been done. It's probably way over that now. I don't know how recent these numbers are. And when they asked patients if they liked it, 97% were satisfied with it. So that's higher than almost any other procedure we do or I've heard of. That so many people like this one treatment. Now women, I wanted to talk today a little bit about women and how beauty has changed and our feelings about self-esteem. I thought I wanted to maybe put something more interesting about this talk rather than just a BOTOX talk. And women have come a long way since the 1940s. Most of us were maybe not around then, but some of us were little, and things were so different. You couldn't even color your hair blonde back in the 1940s without being considered a floozy. Remember that term? So I wanted to tell you a little bit about Shirley Polikoff. Shirley Polikoff, has anybody ever heard of her? You probably have heard of her slogans, though. She, in the 1950s, she went to her fiance's house, and she had her hair dyed blonde. And her future mother-in-law, in Yiddish, said to her fiance, who told her, said, "Does she color her hair or doesn't she?" And she was so embarrassed because it was considered to be very cheap when you colored your hair. She was embarrassed that her mother-in-law was questioning her about this. So she went to work after that to be a junior copywriter at one of the advertising firms in New York, and she got the Clairol account for Nice and Easy. That was the first hair color where you could take it home and shampoo it in and rinse it out, which was revolutionary for women, for hair color. And she came up with the slogan, "Does she or doesn't she?" Only your hairdresser knows for sure. And that's where that came from. But the thing about that statement is you're questioning whether a woman does it, and only her hairdresser should know, because God forbid someone should know that she colors her hair. It has to be a secret. And that's where women were at that time. They had to be the little woman in the house, and they had to live in a very structured way, and they didn't have the rights that we have now. The next thing that happened, though, is in the 60s and 70s, women started entering the workplace. They fought for social emancipation, they got the pill, and times were changing. To illustrate this, a lone spect. Has anyone heard of a lone spect? Probably not. I didn't either. This is, by the way, I got these facts from this great book called What the Dog Saw by Malcolm Gladwell. Very interesting book. In 1973, Aloni was working at L'Oreal, the advertising firm, for their hair color called Preference. Rather than hiding that you're doing your hair color, she came up with a whole different slogan, which you've probably heard of, "Because I'm worth it." Okay? Now that made a whole big different statement about where women were at that point in history. Why should they hide it? Why shouldn't they just say, "I deserve it, I'm worth it, why not?" And it just shows the difference between how feminism and women's sense of self-esteem has changed over the decades. Now, no one thinks twice about coloring their hair. It could be purple, green, the next day it'll be red. I mean, people don't even think about it. And the confidence that women have now in doing what they want to do to maintain their self-esteem is amazing. BOTOX is an example of that, because BOTOX helps a lot of people with their self-esteem because they look better. And women aren't shy, and men, about telling people that they're doing it. Some people don't, but most people are like, "Hey, why not? I'm worth it." Same as L'Oreal. Now, many women don't tell their husbands. That's true. I'm sure probably half of you don't, because half of my patients don't. I polled them once. But that's not because they're ashamed of it. It's because of other reasons, as we all know. Their husbands don't want the money being spent, maybe. But they're not embarrassed about it. And women have come so far when you think about hair color and BOTOX being symbols of that. And Why is Botox so popular though? Well, we all love the results, and I'm for one a fan. It also makes us feel happier about ourselves. There was a study in the November of 2010 Journal of the Dermatologic Surgery that studied 100 patients and gave them surveys on how they felt about themselves, self-worth, self-esteem, quality of life, and they compared it to placebo. So some got injected with Botox, some didn't, and they didn't know which one they got, and they answered these questions before and after their treatments. And it was significant that most women had an increase in their quality of life, self-esteem, and how they felt about their attractiveness after they had the Botox, which didn't happen with the placebo. We also like it because it makes, let's face it, it makes us look younger. Okay? We like that, we feel less stressed when we look in the mirror and look less stressed. And a lot of people do it for work purposes. A lot of people going back into the workforce who are going to be interviewing do it. People who are managers because they're more approachable, they like to do it. And because I've had a lot of men tell me that they do it because they want to keep up with the younger guys in the office. They don't want to look like the old guy. You know, and women do the same thing. So it helps with work-related too. Too bad it's not a business expense though. Botox also affects our emotions in a very positive way. There was a study that showed that when you look in the mirror, if you see yourself being happy, you feel happy. If you see yourself looking mad or angry, which is what these lines here often do, even if you don't feel that way, it sends a feedback loop to your brain that says, I'm not happy, and you start feeling unhappy. So it's really interesting. When you've relaxed those lines, you look in the mirror and you say, I look good. So you're happy you look good, but you also look like you're less stressed, less happy. And again, it feeds back to your brain and says, I feel good. So look, it's also good for emotional reasons. Supposedly it helps with depression because of that. There's also an interesting, let me see where I am here. Sorry, I lost my place. When other people look at you, it's the same thing. If you look happy and you don't have those wrinkles, you look more approachable. People will look at you. You look happier. They'll smile at you because you look happier. They smile at you. You smile back. You feel happier. So it's also an interaction thing with other people. They found that Botox makes everybody happier, which is pretty interesting. But overall, I would say that for both men and women, Botox signifies that we've come a long way, baby, and we deserve to look as good as we feel. And that's one of the reasons I love Botox, and I'm sure a lot of you do. And that's my talk.